The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Recruiting is tough, and luckily I've been behind the curtain specifically with basketball, and so I'm able to use my experience as a player and a coach to help these kids and parents through the recruiting process, from everything from ACT, SAT, eligibility center to, okay, well, what AAU team should I play for? Do I go to elite camps? How do I get in touch with college coaches? And so it's not just basketball, but it's helping them through this entire college recruiting process.
Rob Gardiner is a recruiting coach with NCSA, Next College Student Athlete. At NCSA, Rob helps student athletes and families by guiding them through the recruiting process and helping them find the right college fit on and off the basketball court. Gardiner was previously an assistant coach at D2 Lincoln Memorial University in Tennessee during the 2020-2021 season. He also coached at D2 Ashland University for 8 seasons and was named associate head coach prior to the 2019-2020 season after joining the Eagles as a graduate assistant in 2012. Prior to Ashland, Gardiner was a graduate assistant at Division I Wright State from 2010 to 2012. A 4-year letter winner and 2-year team captain as a player at Ohio Wesleyan, Gardiner led the Battling Bishops to the 2008 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Sweet 16. Hey Hoopheads, anything is possible this March with our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market. Get a huge $2,000 trade-in discount on a new machine in March when you trade in any old Dr. Dish machine. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Rob Summers, assistant men's basketball coach at Cleveland State University, and you are listening to Hoopheads Podcast.
If you're looking to improve your coaching, please consider joining the Hoopheads Mentorship Program. We believe that having a mentor is the best way to maximize your potential and become a transformational coach. By matching you up with one of our experienced mentors, you'll develop a one-on-one relationship that will help your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset. The Hoopheads Mentorship Program delivers mentoring services to basketball coaches at all levels through our team of experienced head coaches. Find out more at hoopheadspod.com or shoot me an email directly, mike@hoopheadspod.com. Follow us on social media at HoopheadsPod on Twitter and Instagram, and be sure to check out the Hoopheads Podcast Network for more great basketball content. Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering Hoopheads listeners 15% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code HHP15 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its Playbank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball. Have a notebook handy as you listen to this episode with Rob Gardiner, recruiting coach at NCSA. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads Podcast. It's Mike Linsling here with my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, and we are pleased to welcome to the podcast recruiting coach from NCSA, Rob Gardiner. Rob, welcome to the Hoopheads Pod.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Jason, happy to be here tonight.
Excited to have you on, Rob. We're going to learn more about your background here in a second, but for those in our audience, Rob has an extensive history of coaching college basketball, and now he's made the transition to become a recruiting coach. And so we're going to dive into exactly what that means and what Rob can do and how he can help student athletes and families. So let's go back in time, Rob, to when you were a kid. Start there. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the game of basketball when you were younger.
Man, I tell you what, Mike, I was a basketball dork growing up. I mean, I was the kid who had, Michael Jordan newspapers plastered all over his wall. And so I was just exposed to the game at a very early age. My dad, love him to death, bless his heart, exposed me to the game. Not the best player, but he really exposed me to the game and taught me a lot about it and really just got me into basketball. And so, but yeah, I was a basketball dork growing up, from just following the Chicago Bulls, anything NBA, anything college. I was just all about basketball, really from the jump.
You're trying to start off on a good note here by bringing up Michael Jordan. So anybody who's listening to the podcast,
this is going to cause a 10-minute tangent. Here we go, 10-minute tangent.
It didn't take us long to get right off track. This is perfect. I love it.
Hey, we can go all day on Ultimate Jordan DVDs and all the old Michael Jordan videos. I can't tell you how many times I've rewatched those.
I'm with you. So I grew up, and I'm 52. Well, I'm about to be 52 anyway. And so when I was, 11, 12, 13 years old, that's obviously when Jordan comes on the scene with the Tar Heels. And just from that point on, I just became the biggest Michael Jordan fan that ever was possible. And so whenever I get into these discussions and start talking about the Jordan versus the LeBron, which obviously is the hot debate now, it always just becomes, I can't, anybody who was there to watch Jordan, I just can't fathom in any way, shape, or form how you could ever possibly make the argument that he wasn't the greatest player. I always tell Jason and tell anybody that wants to argue, not that Jason argues with me, but that Jordan just felt inevitable. I've never watched another athlete in any other sport. Maybe I guess Tom Brady comes close, but
oh, come on, Mike. Wait. That's not true. You've seen other players be inevitable, more like inevitable collapse. James Harden.
Yeah, inevitable the wrong way. Yeah,
yes, inevitable on to the next team.
Correct. Going on and just not coming through. But Jordan just was, man. I remember just sitting and watching and just knowing that this guy is going to figure out a way to get it done. And I've never felt that way about any other athlete in my life. And then that goes beyond just his ability as a player and his mental toughness and all the things that, as a coach, if you could develop in your players, there's so many positive things that Jordan obviously brought to the table. But I think that mental toughness is really what set him apart. And you think about just how great athletes are at that NBA level, that it's really the guys that have the will that end up being the best. And I think Jordan just stood head and shoulders above everybody else when it comes to that.
Yeah, and at the time, Michael Jordan is the ultimate example of just the ultimate athlete, of being one of the most athletic people ever to play any sport, being ultimately skilled, and then being just supremely competitive. I mean, you talk about being a killer, whether it's, Serena Williams, whether it's Kobe Bryant, whether it's Diana Taurasi. I mean, you hear about just these supreme competitive people. And, whether across any, profession, we talking basketball here, but Michael Jordan just absolutely embodied that for the last 30 to 45 years.
There was never anybody that I think wanted to win more than Jordan. And it was interesting to go back, and Jason and I did a podcast after each episode of The Last Dance. And
beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, to go back and be able to live that again. And there's some details that you kind of forget as you go on and you get older, and you just, things fade from memory. So to have that come back and be able to see it and just remember in the moment just how great Jordan was, how competitive he was, how much he wanted to win, how much he just thrived on people challenging him or even perceived
any
challenges,
any perceived slight, whether you're in the media, the famous, high school, whether it's, Buzz Peterson at North Carolina, thought that he was better than him going into North Carolina. So he's like, I'm going to beat out Buzz Peterson and just anything. And, a book, I'm not plugging a book, but like if you read that Blood in the Garden, I can't remember, the name of the author is escaping me right now, but it just came out. But it's about the 90s Knicks and just those competitive series from like 92, 93, Xavier McDaniel, Charles Oakley, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. I mean, it's just, it brings back so many good nostalgic memories for me.
Yeah, and that documentary, as you're watching it, was one of those things where you just never wanted it to end. Like you got to the 10th episode, I was like, wait, this thing's done? Like there's got to be more. Like what's on the cutting room floor? I don't even care if it's coherent. I'll watch it. It doesn't matter. Exactly. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is.
And was that not the perfect time for that to come out? I mean, we're
fantastic.
in just the depths of COVID lockdown at the time. And I mean, I think everyone is in your shoes, Mike, to where it's like, no, give us 10 more hours.
There's no question. I could just sit and watch that for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on loop and never get sick of it. The best part to me, the part I loved the most was the highlights with in the Garden when he scored 63, and you had the LL Cool J I'm Bad playing to go along with that. I'm like, there's no better song to go along with those highlights. And just that was sort of Jordan's coming out party in the NBA, where I think people really became aware, like this guy.
I was gonna say, I think my favorite part was when he was looking at the iPad, and it just started.
And I took that personally.
I took that personally.
That's right. I took that personally.
Yeah.
He didn't know he was setting sail for 1,000 memes right there with some of the quotes in there. But yeah, it was just amazing, and I think Jordan, like I said, as great as LeBron is, and his longevity and what he's been able to do has been incredible. But to me, at least in my lifetime, anybody that I've actually watched play, there's no possible argument that anybody can make that would ever get me to believe that Jordan is not the greatest player of all time. And maybe there's going to be somebody that comes around at some point that surpasses him, but man, I don't know who that person's going to be.
I think Billy Goodwin's making an early run at it, Mike.
Okay. All right. Well, so we do know his name's Brandon Goodwin on the Cavs, but I've adopted him and decided to call him Billy Goodwin just for some reason. So Jason and I call him Billy all the time. But nonetheless, I don't think Billy's going to catch Jordan, and I don't think anybody else is either. So, all right, enough of a Michael Jordan tangent. Let's get back, Rob, to your story. So you're growing up, and you grew up in Dublin, Ohio, and did you play any other sports besides basketball growing up?
Yeah, I played a lot of sports. Played baseball, played soccer, would just love to compete, love to be out there, on any form of competition. And you get to that point in life, whether it's getting into middle school or high school, where you kind of got to decide, do I want to go down a single sport? And, I kind of put baseball aside at the time and decided to focus 100% on basketball, just because I knew I wanted to spend every waking hour on basketball. I mean, I ate, slept, and breathed basketball from, mornings to evenings. And so, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And so going into high school, I had two great coaches at Kaufman. Tony Bornhorst was a longtime coach at Dublin Kaufman, and I went to his camps year after year and was a really great basketball coach and just really instilled kind of that toughness and competitive mindset. And then I was very lucky to play for Jamie Collins, who is one of the best high school coaches in the country, and just really gave me a lot of confidence, really believed in me, really from my freshman year. And so just really provided me a good atmosphere to grow and just a lot of confidence in me, and, allowed me to really kind of spread my wings. And honestly, one of the things he does better, I think, than any high school coach in the country is open up the gym. Now, I'm not trying to get coach in trouble here by saying, like maybe some keys were left places or maybe some rocks were, but that's a different time where, the doors weren't as secure maybe as they are now in high schools. But, there was always a way to get into the Dublin Kaufman gym. And I think Jamie Collins is one of the best coaches in the country at helping his players achieve their full potential.
And I think that goes to something that we've talked about on the podcast, is just in order to have a successful high school program today as a high school coach, you really have to have the gym open and give your players opportunities to get in and get better, whether that's working on skill development, just getting in there and getting up shots, or working on their game, or having the gym open so guys can play open gym, or bringing in other schools and the times when that's legal to be able to do. And I think the amount of time that high school coaches put in, when you start talking about, especially I think the parents of high school athletes, and I'm sure now in your current role that when you have these conversations, that parents of high school players, I don't think have a real good grasp on how much time the average high school coach puts in. And then to double back on that, I think the coaches that are really tremendously successful, the baseline has been raised in terms of how much time you have to put in. It's certainly higher than it was 15 or 20 years ago. And the coaches that are the most successful are the ones that have to put in a ton of time to do exactly what you described, to get the gym open, to be able to have kids. And that's all time that the coach has to spend, that, as you and I both know, that's unpaid time. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
And coaches do that out of the love of the game.
Yes, exactly. That's something that yeah, I know Jamie does a great job of just opening up the gym and just developing a competitive environment. Whether it's just allowing kids like myself to get in and just work by themselves or creating open gyms. I mean, we started it's still running a tradition there, but it's a July 4th open gym. And I mean, that started just, I think my sophomore year, maybe with just kind of 8 of us going in on July 4th and just having an open gym that morning just because we just wanted to hoop. And now I think Kaufman does it where, I mean, there's literally alumni that come back, and I think they get, up to 30 to 40 people there on July 4th, kind of running an open gym tournament. And so just basketball is really in the culture there at Dublin Kaufman. And so it really just allows kids the opportunity, like you said, Mike, not only just to play, but to compete and to really get better and just develop, lifelong friendships that I still have to this day.
When you think about your experience as a high school player, once you got to the point where you gave up other sports, so now you're a high school athlete and you're focused in on basketball, I don't know if there was a typical day, but what did a day in your summer look like in terms of you spending time trying to improve your game and work at the game of basketball?
Oh, all day. And that's no exaggeration to where, I was very lucky. We moved into a house. We moved into Columbus probably when I was in 3rd grade, and we actually moved into a neighborhood right across the street from the high school. And so, I'd be able to go over to the high school gym basically whenever I wanted, rode my bike over there every morning before school, over the summer in the mornings going over there, working out. And then, we'd have, like a team workout or something like that. And then you get in the weight room. And then, depending on what time it is, if it's June in Ohio, we're doing high school stuff. And so it's, high school practices, then we do team camps or summer leagues or stuff like that. If it's May or July, we're doing AAU practices. And so, basketball for me growing up was truly an all-day thing. I had 2 younger brothers that I loved to compete with. Both played basketball and were both very good athletes. And so, just that competition day in and day out was really something that I just craved and still crave to this day.
How did you put together a workout for yourself? What did you base it on? Was it you just trying to figure it out? Did you sit down with your coaches? How did you go about putting together, when you're working on your game by yourself, how did you figure out what you wanted to work on and exactly what kind of drills and things you were going to do? Just curious.
Yeah, a lot of that would be some self-awareness. And, now how much self-awareness does a 16 to 17-year-old have? Is probably a sliding scale of not very much at all. And so, yeah, I'd put together a workout of, I knew my weaknesses. I knew I wasn't a great 3-point shooter. I knew I wasn't a tremendous, floater, left-hand finishing. And so I'd work a lot on those situations as far as, how to develop a quicker release, extending my 3-point range, diversifying the types of 3-point shots I was able to take. And so, but then I'd also talk with my coach. Jamie was very good. And once again, spending time with me as far as developing an individual game plan as far as these are the things you need to get better at. All right, if you want to play at the college level, these are the things that you need to get better at. And he'd give me, a couple drills. And, one thing I was very lucky too at Dublin Kaufman is the alumni come back a lot. And so the alumni come back a lot and work out with the high school players during the summer, whether that are, college guys that come back and work out with the high school kids. Fortunate at Dublin Kaufman, we've had a couple pros from Kaufman who have come back over the summer, and, specifically Chris Quinn, who has played at Notre Dame, played in the NBA. He's assistant coach with the Miami Heat right now. He really set a lot of the culture at Dublin Kaufman for, workouts, and really helped me out personally, with some of those summer workouts and really how to improve my game, especially as a point guard.
Yeah, to be able to have that connection when you start talking about building a program and not just having a one-off successful team. But if you're a high school coach and you're in and you're out, you're building that program, that alumni base is a huge part of having success. So I think it goes both ways, right? You have the alumni who come back and participate in the program and support the program, whether that's, again, working out with players or coming back for open gyms or just showing up at games, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have the same piece of it on the other end of it where it's really important, I feel, for high school coaches to make those connections with the younger players in the program. So you're going back and you're getting involved in the youth program. You're getting to know those kids when they're in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grades. And so that eventually they aspire to want to be a part of your program because they know you as the coach. They know the players who are part of the program. They come to games on Friday night, so they're like, man, I can't wait till I can put on the uniform and go out there and get out on the floor. And I think that's one of the things when you look at the most successful high school programs, especially when you're talking about public schools, you're talking about both of those things. You're talking about a connection with the youth program, and you're talking about a connection with the alumni, which it sounds like basically that's what you experienced.
Yes, and I can't overemphasize what you talked there about, Mike, as far as camps. And, growing up myself, I idolized the high school varsity basketball team. So whether it's going to high school games or whether it's going to those camps over the summer, I idolized those, and those were my heroes. And so, it's like I couldn't wait to put on the high school jersey, going into high school. And so, that's something that I still love working camps today, working kids camps, just because, I tell high school guys, I tell, college guys, these kids idolize you. And so you want to make sure that you give them a great experience, not only from a basketball perspective, but just make sure that they have fun. And so, that's something that, I always had a great experience at camps growing up. And Dublin does a great job of just creating that brotherhood, creating that community around the program.
What's your favorite memory from playing high school basketball? Is one or two stand out for you?
I'd say there's a couple. I was lucky enough to be on 3 years at varsity, very successful. We never made it to the state championship or anything like that, but we won district. We won districts my sophomore year, and then lost in the district championship game my junior and senior year. Lost 3 straight times to Brookhaven. And so, that was back when, you guys remember Brookhaven, they had Andrew Lavender, they had Jamel Cornley. They were absolute dynasty back in the mid to early 2000s and out of Columbus. And so, one memory was my junior year. We won our league, and we just had a great crowd. We had it was against our arch rival Wesleyan, and it was the last game, came down to at our place, and we beat Wesleyan at our place, packed house, sold out, and so that was just fun. We were playing against Josh Bostic, who was a great player from Wesleyan, went on to Findlay and was the National Player of the Year at Findlay, helped them to a national championship in 2009. So that was a great experience, and then just another kind of funny experience. I don't know if funny is the right word, but so we're in the tournament, we're in the fairgrounds. It's my junior year, and I'm driving. I can't remember what game it was. Might have been the district semifinals, and I just make a hard cut in front of my bench. I think just a right to left crossover, and my right foot just goes full Zion. Just goes right through the shoe. All right, and I still have the shoe, by the way.
That's cool.
Yeah, honestly, Zion copied me. And so, my foot goes right through the shoe, and, I literally just take the shoe off, throw it at the bench right there, and someone just throws me another shoe right there and continue to play the rest of the game.
Hopefully your foot's in better shape than Zion's is today.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, my feet are good. Yeah, so Zion and I are not exactly the same type.
Okay, Rob, here we go. This is a Zion question for you. Will Zion Williamson play more or less than 250 games in his NBA career?
I'll say more. I'm an optimist with that. Now the question is, how many more games will he play with the Pelicans?
You're crazy. Yeah. You're crazy. He's not playing 250 games.
Yeah, Jason's on this train. He doesn't think he's going to play 250. I'm with you, Rob. I bet the over, but man, it's kind of scary when you look at his size and just the things that he does. And he's such a unique player. And so it kills you when this guy can't get out on the floor. And obviously, as you said, who knows if he's going to end up staying in New Orleans or not staying in New Orleans. It seems like just because of the silence that there's been this void of information. And obviously when there's a void, lots of people jump in with their thoughts and opinions, and who knows what's right and what's wrong and whether he's happy or unhappy, who knows. But man, to not have that guy out on the floor, because when he's been out there and he's been healthy, he's been unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. And I hope he kind of, from a health perspective, it's kind of like, is he going to go Greg Oden or is he going to go Joel Embiid? Because Joel Embiid, barely played his first 3 years. And then, now you look at him and, best player in the league, top 3, whatever you want to say. But, that's my hope for Zion. I'm more hopeful and optimistic, when it comes to stuff like this. But also, you're never surprised when something happens in the NBA. It's, whether it's, guys asking out of teams or anything, it's just, you're never surprised.
Yeah, these days, it's a totally different world in the NBA today, just in terms of contracts. And I think the next collective bargaining agreement is going to be very interesting to see it seems like the league always has an idea in mind of how to be able to make things flow smoother. Like the last contract, they were obviously very concerned about trying to get teams that already had superstars to be able to re-sign those guys and have them stay. And then it's turned out, then you end up with contracts like John Wall or Westbrook where
can't do anything with them.
Yeah, you can't let those guys go for nothing. And yet the alternative is you sign them to a $45 million salary, which seems absolutely crazy. Even in the moment while you're doing it, I'm sure that those teams are you're kind of biting the inside of your cheek going, man, I hope this works out, even though you kind of know that you just paint yourself into a corner. So it's kind of that law of unintended consequences where they had good intentions, but then there's always something that you didn't think about or a way of looking at it that nobody had considered prior to. And so it'll be interesting to see how they approach this next collective bargaining agreement, both from the player side and the owner side, and see if they can somehow, maybe they don't want to. I mean, because of all the talk about just where guys are going and this and that and the drama, it just generates a lot more interest in the league, which certainly is good for business. But it's hard to take sometimes as a fan that here's a guy that signed a 5-year contract and after a year he wants to leave. And especially like in Harden's case, like it's one thing you want out and you keep playing, but man, to just dog it and quit on your team, that, man, I don't know.
And as far as, the CBA, like you said, it's always going to be unintended consequences. And a lot of it is just because, I mean, those GMs and front offices are so smart, and necessity is the mother of invention. And so whatever rules are put in place, people, players, GMs, everyone they're going to find loopholes because, hey, they're trying to win. And so, they're going to find loopholes around that. But I mean, I think an interesting conversation, I don't know if we have time to get into it, but, that you hear a lot now is the drama of the NBA becoming more important than the games? I mean, I guess not important, but more popular than the games.
That's a great question. I think when I think about how I consume the NBA, I probably so I have about a 45 to 50 minute commute each way every day to my job. So during that time, most often what I'm listening to is some kind of NBA podcast programming.
Right there with you.
That's what I'm listening to.
Yep.
So that's basically an hour and a half a day that I'm consuming, not necessarily just drama, because obviously there's some basketball analysis that goes in there, but a lot of it is speculation and drama. And then I think about the amount of actual games that I'm watching, especially in the regular season. Now in the regular season, I'm going to catch Cavs games, and I'll occasionally catch one of the national games. But I'm probably consuming more of the drama. And then when I factor in what I'm reading, I'm probably consuming more of the drama than I am the actual basketball. Now when it comes to the playoffs, I think that probably skews back to more actual basketball. But I think you're right that piece of it that's outside of the game that's on the floor, that part that's behind the scenes, that's part that's in the front office, that's part that's the rumor mill, the thoughts of, hey, what's going to happen next and who's going here and the draft and all these different things. I think there's a huge, huge market for that. And you can see just by the proliferation of websites and writers and podcasters and all those things, people that are, again, that just love talking about the league. And again, a lot of it is speculation about who's going where and what's happening next, and not necessarily what's actually happening on the floor.
Oh yeah, and especially like you said, during the regular season, the storylines and can kind of take over instead of the actual X's and O's. But I do think once we get into the playoffs, then you really see the actual X's and O's, the analysis come out, and even during the year right now, I mean, some of the best, whether you're, I mean, we all know, have our own X's and O's people we listen to, but it's you can find it. But yeah, it's just I was thinking about it, or heard someone pose that question the other day, of just that kind of dichotomy and just what are we leaning more towards? I think it was Ryan Russillo, who said like their biggest ratings for basketball are during that July free agent period.
Right. Yeah, you could see why. I mean, again, it's that, right? It's the hope. It's the hope. So every organization, if you're a fan of any of the 30 teams, when it comes now. Again, most teams probably realistically don't have a shot at getting free agent X or Y, but they might have the opportunity to get some kind of free agent. It's a time when
Are you saying Kawhi's not going to Orlando?
Kawhi's probably not going to Orlando, and nobody's coming to Cleveland, I don't think, unless again they grew up 30 miles from the city of Cleveland. So that I don't think that's going to happen again anytime soon, where we're going to be able to do that. So we better continue to build organically. I like what the Cavs have going right now, but yeah, it's I don't know. It is interesting.
I don't like what they have going on tonight, Mike. Oof.
Yeah, well, they're struggling, I think, tonight. So they were. I know they were down 15 at halftime. I don't.
They're
think
down 18 right now. So there you go.
All right, there you go. Well, nonetheless, I do think that the NBA's popularity has skyrocketed due to all of those things kind of around it, which is funny because baseball used to be that way, right? Baseball used to be baseball free agency, the hot stove league, and back when I was a kid, that was kind of where people talked about the trades but now baseball is kind of dying, at least in that respect. You don't have the same level of interest in it that you used to, and basketball has certainly surpassed that. Has certainly surpassed baseball when it comes to the hot stove season in July with free agency and everything else. So the NBA is in an interesting place. There's a ton of talent in the league, and I'm definitely looking forward to the playoffs this year. It should be fun. And the East, I think, is, at least in terms of interest and producing 4 interesting series, I think the East is going to be a bloodbath this year, which is normally how you feel about the West.
Every game in the Eastern Conference playoffs is just going to be a master chess match to watch.
Plus, you have a lot of different styles and different kinds of teams. And it's just, now seeing how Harden and Embiid are going to fit together and who's going to be playing for Brooklyn. And you got the crazy Cavs, big lineups. And there's just a lot of interesting teams that do a lot of different things, which makes those styles make the fight, right? So if you have different styles, that makes the coaching a lot more interesting to watch. All right, let's jump back to your career as a player. Talk a little bit about your recruitment, how you end up at Ohio Wesleyan. What was your process like for making a decision about where you're going to go to school, where you're going to continue your basketball career?
Yeah, and hey, as we all do, I thought I was a Division I player, my junior year, and I thought I was going to be a Division I player, and I'm a 6 foot in the program, point guard, and not overly fast, not overly skilled, not overly athletic, knee problems, not a Division I player, and it's like you look back, it's like, what was I thinking? And so, so I ended up getting a lot of, Division III recruitment, a lot of schools around. Great. Ohio is great for Division IIIs. And so I got recruited to a couple Division IIIs in Ohio and eventually ended up at Ohio Wesleyan University. And it's a school that I just felt comfortable at as far as from a basketball perspective, as far as I just fit the basketball culture there. They were really a program that was on the up and up. Socially, it was a thing where, I just really, enjoyed the culture there, going on visits there. I just really thought, fit with, guys in that culture. And then academically, I did actually care about my academics. I know that's, kind of cliche to say, but, academics were a factor. And so, they did have a good, I originally wanted to be a teacher and a coach at the high school level. And so they had an unbelievable education program. And so Ohio Wesleyan was a school that allowed me to step in and compete for minutes right away as a freshman, and for a program that was on the up and up while getting a phenomenal education and being around great teammates that I wanted to hang out with off the court, in the cafeteria, and compete with every day.
What do you take away from your experience being recruited that you can personally share in your current role? Is there things that you can look back at and say, this is something that I did well, and it really helped me to end up in the right place? And then conversely, were there mistakes that you made that you could share and say, ooh, this is something that maybe I should have done better, or maybe here's something I did, but I probably shouldn't have done that? Is there anything that sticks out to you like that?
I think, looking at it from, all right, basketball is important, and you want to make a decision that includes basketball, but there's more to college than basketball. All right. And so I really looked at Ohio Wesleyan, and, like I said, that's a great fit for me, where I'm going to grow from an athletic perspective on the basketball court. I'm going to grow socially, and, I'm going to be around the right type of people who are going to challenge me, and, can I talk about positive peer pressure? All right. And then it's going to help me grow academically and help me have a career for the next 60 to 70 years. just because, I tell everyone the ball's going to stop bouncing for you at some point, whether you're 18, whether you're 22, whether you're 32. The ball's going to stop bouncing for you at some point, and so you got to have a degree and a career that you got to be ready to go with. And so Ohio Wesleyan and Coach Mike DeWitt and his assistant at the time was actually John Vanderwall, who is now at Marietta, a very successful coach there. But Coach DeWitt really kind of painted that picture for me. And as far as giving me a vision for my future and allowing me to see that, and then giving me an opportunity to pursue it. And so, something that I would probably do differently is, I would, and this is a very common, especially in the job that I have now and seeing this is, go to where and pay attention to schools that are paying attention to you. And so, hey, because we all want to play at North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, Stanford,
Absolutely.
But exactly. And so, but just how unrealistic that is, because once again, 16, 17, 18-year-olds don't exactly have the most self-awareness. And so you want to go to a place that's showing you love, showing you attention. And then if you're a good basketball player, you want to go to a place where you can play. All right, and then play and compete for a championship. All right, I mean, we look at it, whether it's, a Division III kid looking to go Division II or a Division II kid looking to go Division I, and just kind of scrape in at that bottom tier, whatever that next tier is. Are you competing just to make your conference tournament and barely play? Or do you want to go to a level that's a good fit for you where you can play a lot and have a chance to compete for a conference championship and even a potential national championship?
How do you feel the adjustment was for you coming in both as a player and as a student?
As a player, it was tough. I'm not going to lie. It was tough. And, my old boss at Ashland, John Elwood, says this, and, it's extremely true, that your hardest day in basketball in high school is every day in college. I mean, and just so you walk in as a freshman and, once again, whether you're going in Division I, Division II, Division III, NAI, you're walking in from boys basketball to men's basketball. And so it is a huge difference in size, speed, athleticism, skill level. And so, I mean, I struggled as a freshman. And, I was, lucky enough to work myself into, backup point guard, getting probably 12 to 15 minutes a game. But still, you walk in there, you're coming off a senior year where, I'm hot stuff. And you walk in there thinking, I'm going to, take this program over. And, it's like, no, you got sophomores, juniors, seniors, and you got other freshmen that are coming in that were the best player in their high school's history. You're not in high school anymore where you're competing against baseball players, football players, stuff like that. Everyone who plays in college, whether it's Division III to Division I, is one of the best players in their high school's history.
There's no question about that. I think people have a very skewed idea of how good you have to be in order to play college basketball at any level. And I think you can just go and show up at an AAU tournament and have conversations with people, and you quickly come to realize that most people, including players and parents, just don't have a great understanding of how good you have to be in order to play or be recruited at any level. And I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions that are out there. And it's interesting, one of the things that we've talked about with lots of coaches, especially on the Division III level, is the number of players that they talk to that they're recruiting who maybe aren't all that excited about being recruited by a Division III school, and yet they've never even seen a Division III game, and they have no idea how good those players are. And I think if you get an opportunity, if you're a high school player out there listening, or you're a parent of a high school athlete and you're listening to this, get out wherever you are, wherever you live in the country, and try to find a Division III college basketball game and go and watch and see how good those players are. And I think if we had more people that actually watched those games, especially in person, you would have a completely different outlook on what level you think you could play at and how good your experience could be, no matter whether you're playing at the Division I level or you're playing at the Division III level.
Oh, exactly. And I'm just speaking from experience at Division III, but, I absolutely loved my time, playing at Ohio Wesleyan. We were lucky enough, we made it to the Sweet 16 my sophomore year. And so just being able to compete for conference championships, for national championships, along with getting a great education. And, this is part of life, is getting your butt kicked. You talk about your freshman year, you're going to get kicked in the teeth. And so, but you got to learn in life that, yeah, you're going to get kicked in the teeth, whether that is, a lot worse going after college. But, if you got to learn how to deal with failure. And so just because you're going to fail at anything in life. And so, you come in your freshman year, you're going to get kicked in the teeth. And so you got to come back each and every day and just continue to do the work, continue to do the little things. There's no magic pill. There's no magic button, of how to get ahead in life or how to be a great player. It's just put in the work each and every day.
That is so true. You really do have to work at it. I think, especially when you get to college basketball, it's a completely different animal than high school basketball. I've said numerous times that high school basketball, every single moment of it to me was fun. I don't remember there ever being a day where I thought, ooh, this is tough. This was just every practice, every game, every open gym, every workout, everything was fun. And then I got to college, and there was still a lot of fun in there, but there was also a lot of work and a lot of things that maybe didn't seem as fun in the moment. And as you said, you got to put that time in, you got to go through the grind, and you got to do that if you want to be able to ultimately have some success, both as a team and individually. As you think about your career, you got to really put that time in. As you were playing, you mentioned earlier that you kind of went into college with the idea that you wanted to be a teacher and a coach. So as you're playing, you're going through your playing career, are you maybe paying closer attention to what your coaches were doing and what they were thinking? Or were you more focused on, at this point, I'm just a player, and coaching was kind of this nebulous thing that was maybe at the end of your playing career?
Yeah, I'd say once I got to my sophomore year, just because freshman year, my head's in a fishbowl. The world's moving a million miles per hour. I'm still trying to figure out, what dorm I'm in. How do I not lose, my room key, where class is at. And so once I got to my sophomore year, kind of figure myself out a little bit, I knew I wanted to be a coach. And, like I said, I was a major in education and history, and so I wanted to be a history teacher, coach high school. And so I was definitely keenly aware, and paid a lot more attention to, Coach DeWitt and, our assistant coaches, and just kind of, started to talk the game a little bit more with them as far as why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And that's a line that you get a lot more in college than you do in high school. In high school, and Jamie, Coach Collins was very good at including me with a lot of conversations, but in high school, it's a lot more listen to the coach and do this. In college, it's a lot more, well, what do you see out there? Well, what do you see out there? What do you think we should do? It's a much more of a partnership in college than it is in high school. And so, I embrace that at the college level, and, just really, and you want to say with the coaching perspective in mind, but just I was very curious, and just I'm a very curious person by nature. And so, asking questions, whether it's defensive schemes, offensive schemes, and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely with that in mind of, I want to be a coach in the future.
So when you graduate and your idea is to be a high school coach, and yet you ended up getting an opportunity to go to Wright State as a graduate assistant. So how did that come to be? And was that something that it was just a great opportunity that you couldn't pass up, and you still thought, well, maybe after I get done there, I'm going to go back and be a high school coach? Did you have some feelers out there to get a teaching job and maybe get a coaching job at the high school level? Just how did you get to that first coaching position at Wright State?
Yeah, I'm going down the full path of, student teaching and going through that whole process as far as, okay, now what's, teaching and coaching life like after college. And I was very lucky. A friend of a friend, Coach Ray, who was a volunteer assistant at Kaufman, knew Billy Donlin, who was going to be the new head coach at Wright State. Coach Ray lived out in Dayton, and so he connected me with Coach Donlin, who once again was a new head coach at Wright State. And so he was in the process of hiring his staff, and Coach Ray just knew how much of a basketball dork and junkie I was. And so, he kind of pushed me to pursue this graduate assistant role with Wright State, and I was very lucky and still very thankful to Coach Donlin to this day for getting my foot in the door. Because it's talking with kids today, whether it's in guys looking to get into coaching, it's so tough to get your foot in the door. And I was very, very fortunate to have this opportunity with Wright State, and I'm very thankful to Coach Donlin for opening that door for me. But yeah, and so that opportunity presented itself, and as soon as he offered it to me, I think I said yes before he even finished the sentence.
So how long into being a college coach did it take for you to say, I think I want to stay in college coaching? Because I guess it also would be possible that you get in there and you're like, man, maybe this isn't everything that I thought it was. Maybe my original path of wanting to be a teacher and wanting to be a coach at the high school level, maybe I go back to that. So how long was it into your experience at Wright State where you started to say, yeah, I think college is the right place for me?
Oh, day one. Day one, without a doubt. I still remember to this day. I mean, we're in there, and the other GA at the time, Justin Ray, who was actually the head coach at Thomas More right now, doing a great job down there. And, we're doing our GA work, which is, grunt work, as you would imagine, but still it's basketball. And, I remember thinking like, well, I get to work with basketball all day. Like I don't have to, because I'm once again, Mike coming out of teaching, developing lesson plans all day, and going through all that paperwork and all that stuff. And I loved teaching. I loved the working with the kids, which is translates to coaching, but just all that paperwork and stuff. And so I'm there, and I'm like, wait, so we just get to do basketball all day? Like we get to work out, we get to do film, we get to obviously there's like as in any job there's grunt work and stuff, especially as a GA. But it's like I realized I get to just work with basketball all day. I'm not going back. This is awesome.
I could see that completely. Yeah. I could see that completely, especially you describing your experience and what kind of a basketball kid you were, and then all of a sudden now you have the opportunity to sort of extend that where you're in college, you're going to class, but still a lot of your life as a college basketball player revolves around college basketball, let's face it.
Yep.
And so when you then get an opportunity at the coaching side of it to jump in and, as you said, be like, wow, all day long, I'm just doing basketball. And obviously there's some tangential things that aren't directly basketball related, but you're still working on basketball. You're not in a classroom teaching 6 different classes and doing lesson plans and paperwork and all the things that you talked about. So yeah, completely something that I'm sure was immediately attractive to you.
Yeah, and it's like I can get paid for this. This can be a career. Like this isn't a job. I can get paid for doing basketball all day. Sign me up.
That's pretty good. So what's something that you learned in those first 2 years that if you had to pick one thing that sticks with you from that first experience, even today, what's something that you learned in that first experience that is still here, that's still part of what you do day in, day out? Preparation by far. And I was lucky enough to work with a great staff there. And, remember coming from Division III where I was at, going to Division I, once again, we talk about all college basketball is tough, but that's a big jump from Division III to Division I. And so to see the level of preparation that goes into, creating a college basketball Division I program was very eye-opening to me, from everything from scouting reports to, how Coach Donlin, organized the workouts, to practices, to conditioning, to, how everything was synergized with the weight training, to, team conditioning, to academics, to study. I mean, the preparation in detail down to a minute was just, at first overwhelming for me, kind of coming from, where I was at, Coach DeWitt runs a very, it's a very successful program, but it's much more relaxed. And so, going to a program that was very, very detail oriented, and just, that's the one thing I learned there was how to prepare. And just the ability to prepare allows you to be successful when the moment comes. And so that's one thing that I've really taken in, once again, in anything that I do today. And I want to, credit specifically kind of Scott Woods with this. I typed up a lot of scouting reports and stuff like that. But if there was one typo or anything, or a space in between, or this, there should be a comma here, he would come out and, let me know about it. And, just the amount of preparation in detail when it's like, these guys aren't going to notice a comma, but it's everything mattered. And, that was just something that, really stuck with me, was just details matter, preparation matters. And, that was just one thing that really stood with me. And going from a Division III program where obviously the staff is much smaller, right? Mm-hmm. You have a head coach, you have an assistant coach, maybe you have one other person that is involved. Maybe you have a part-time assistant if you're lucky at the Division III level. Now you go to a Division I staff where you have multiple guys, and you can really focus in and dial in on that. I think what's interesting is we've talked to guys like yourself who have started at the Division I level as a graduate assistant or as a volunteer in some cases, and they talk about the exact same thing that you talked about, just that you can really zero in on all those details because you have enough staff that you can say, okay, you're in charge of X and you're taking care of Y. And then you talk to some guys that have started at the Division III level, and conversely, what they like to talk about is I kind of had to do everything. So as a coach, I was able to get my hands immediately. I was 22 and I was out on the road. I was the main recruiter, and I was the guy that the head coach gave me the defense that particular season. And so it's just interesting that no matter what avenue you find your way into the college game, you can figure out a way to be able to make your experience one that you can build on as you move forward in your career, whether it's at the Division I level where maybe you're more hyper-focused on a particular thing, or you're even in a GA job where you're not doing as much of the actual quote-unquote coaching versus in Division III where you're like, man, I got to do everything here. And so I think there's merits to both experiences as long as you go into it with an open mind and you look at it and you keep your eyes open and just pay attention to what's going on so you can gather the things that you need to learn in order to help you as you move on and advance in your career.
Exactly. As a Division I GA, I mean, you're not coaching on the floor. And so, but just the amount that I learned, I mean, if you want to, like, in that first summer, in those first couple workouts, Coach Donlin has an unbelievable basketball mind. And so just learning from him, learning from the other coaches was just outstanding. It was just basketball heaven. Even though it's like I'm in there as a practice dummy, holding the towel, getting water, filming, doing laundry, doing all those things. But it's just, I'm an absolute sponge. And that's just advice to anyone who, is young and trying to get into coaching or is in their first coaching job. And really, all of us, all right? We should be absolute sponges. And that's just something that I just really, remember about that time, was just how I just absolutely learned so much.
Then your next opportunity comes at Ashland. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so 2 years at Wright State, and then it's kind of like, okay, well, what's next? I can check Hoop Dirt, about every 30 minutes to see, what openings. But it's like I'm not getting a job off Hoop Dirt, like those that's not real. And so, but I was lucky enough to where a guy who actually recruited me, John Ellenwood, he was an assistant at Capital when I was in high school. And so he had actually recruited me to Capital, and he loves to tell his story about how I ended up choosing Ohio Wesleyan over him. And, that was for other factors. Coach Wood did a great job at Capital. And so anyway, now here, 6 years later, he's the head coach at Ashland University, and he has a GA opening. And so, I was just a GA for 2 years at Wright State, but I don't have any other job opportunities. What do I do now? And so he offered me to go be the GA for his team at Ashland University. And so, I was very thankful and very lucky for that. And so I became a third-year GA. And so, when you're that age, you have to do whatever you have to do to stay in the business. If that's taking part-time job, if that's taking another, a third-year GA job, if that's volunteering somewhere, money wasn't, like, I made pennies and spent pennies. I could care less, I walked to work every day, and just like the money didn't matter. And so, I just wanted to stay in the game, wanted to stay a part of basketball. And so I was very lucky that Coach Owen would offer me that GA spot. So I was at Ashland for a year as a GA. And then the assistant who was ahead of me at the time, Jared Ronay, actually the head coach at Mount Vernon Nazarene right now, left to take a Division I assistant job. And so Coach Wood, very thankful, elevated me to his full-time assistant there. And then I was his full-time assistant at Ashland for 7 years.
What was that like to make some money coaching?
It was different. It was different, but it felt good. It felt good. And, but once again, it's not about the money. And just, it was like, this is passion. And so it's one of my favorite stories is, one of the coaches at Wright State, pulled me in literally the first day on the job. And, he pulled me and the other GA in and said, "This ain't no 9 to 5, boy." And and no truer words have ever been spoken as far as, coaching's not a 9 to 5. And, whether you're a high school coach, like we talk about in high school, the sacrifice to open up the gym, in college, whether it's Division I, Division II, it's not a 9 to 5, but it's a passion. And so, the hours don't matter. The money, doesn't matter, especially to me. I was 25, 24, I didn't have kids. And so the money was, not the important thing to me at the time.
I think you have to love it, right?
Yes.
Especially when you get in at the beginning, because everybody sees the glamour. You see the guys who are Division I head coaches. You see them as we head into March Madness here, and you got guys in the tournament and they're making millions of dollars. And sure, there are guys that eventually make it to that level, but those guys are few and far between. And especially when you're talking about young coaches, you're going to have to get in where you fit in. You're going to have to make probably no money. We always hear guys saying, hey, you got to be willing to move and go wherever you can in the country. Wherever there's a job, you got to be willing to go there if you want to get into the business. And we've heard so many stories, Rob, about guys that talked about, I'm living in a basement somewhere and I'm making no money and I'm eating ramen noodles and some family that, the head coach is helping me out and, giving me a meal every once in a while and just all those kinds of things. And I think people discount just how hard it is to get to the point as a college coach where you can actually make some real money. And then to your point, it's not a 9-to-5 job. So you're not getting home every day at 5:00. You're in the office, you're up early, you're at games, you're on the road, whether you're scouting or you're traveling or you're recruiting. There's just so much that goes into it that I think, again, coaches who are in the business understand how difficult it is to continue to advance and work hard and do all the things that you need to do. And it just speaks to the passion that coaches have and that coaching requires. Because if you don't have that passion, man, that life can wear you down really, really fast.
Exactly. Yeah. You're dead on passion. And it's, it's the absolute fuel that you need to be successful in this business.
All right. So after your years at Ashland, you get a chance at Lincoln Memorial. Talk a little bit about how and why that came to be.
Yeah, so I was at Ashland for 8 years. Loved my time there. Coach Ellenwood, great coach there. 2nd wins all time. Soon to be the all-time winningest coach at Ashland. And but kind of felt like myself. I was, I needed a change. Just personally, more so professionally. And, just the opportunity presented itself where, I got a call one day from Coach Schertz down at Lincoln Memorial. And he said he had an open assistant spot and, he was looking for someone to kind of recruit the Midwest and come in and kind of, be his defensive coordinator. And so, obviously anyone who knows anything about college basketball knows Lincoln Memorial and Josh Schertz is synonymous with winning and consistency. And so, I thought long and hard about it just because I love the people at Ashland, but, I was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up to be a part of a potential national championship team at Lincoln Memorial. And so, I was there for 1 year and learned so much from Coach Schertz. He's an unbelievable person, an unbelievable coach. And, he's gone on and he's now the head coach actually at Indiana State. And Coach Jeremiah Samarippis is doing a phenomenal job there at Lincoln Memorial here in his first year as head coach there.
So after that 1 year, are you reevaluating the lifestyle as a college basketball coach that causes you to jump over? Are you just presented with an opportunity that sounds like it's too good to pass up? Just what's the process for getting out of college coaching? What's your thinking there?
Yeah, and so that's more, the reasons for getting out of college coaching were kind of more personal as far as, I was engaged at the time, and so I'm about to get married. My wife she's an unbelievable. She's a college coach herself. And so she's the associate head coach at Ashland University for the women's team there. And so she's unbelievable. She's National Assistant Coach of the Year. And so she's an absolute stud. And so, I was just, it was tough with 2 coaches in a relationship. And so, I knew I wanted to stay in basketball. And so, NCSA was an opportunity that presented itself and it was perfect. I mean, just the opportunity to stay in basketball and the opportunity to continue as a mentor. That's one thing I really enjoyed about coaching was the mentorship of it, as far as, taking kids from 16, 17 years old and then, showing them, how to become, a better person, a better man, a better student, and then seeing that maturation from 16, 17, 18-year-old to 22 years old was something that I knew I wanted to be a part of my life. And so, the combination of basketball, fulfillment, and mentorship, NCSA was just a perfect fit.
All right, so for people who aren't familiar with NCSA, just give us the quick lowdown on exactly what you guys do, and then we'll dive into specifically what you're doing on a day-to-day basis to help athletes and families.
Yeah, so NCSA, next college student athlete. And so what we're a digital recruiting company to where we help kids all over the country connect with college coaches. All right. And so, what that is, as far as we help kids connect with schools that they're interested in, and then we help kids get exposure for reasons they're not able to, whether, especially with COVID for the past 2 years, a lot of, college coaches weren't allowed out to recruit. And so, kids who don't get enough exposure or, just aren't very familiar with the recruiting process, we help you with the recruiting process. And so me personally, I'm a men's basketball recruiting coach. And so, I kind of take you behind the scenes into a college coach's perspective. As far as, I've coached Division I, I've coached Division II, I've played Division III. And so I've kind of seen that full spectrum of college basketball. And so I not only help kids with their skill development as far as watching their film, evaluating them, what are some of your strengths? What are some of your weaknesses? How do college coaches look at your film? All right. But then I also help them and have some of those tough conversations as far as, well, what level should I be looking at, coach? Am I a Division III player? Am I a Division I player? Am I a Division II player? That's a perspective that I can give them some guidance on as far as you should be looking at this level. And these are some schools that I think, based off your academics, based off your basketball, based off, kind of your region, your location, these are some schools that I think you should be looking at. And then I end up connecting them with college coaches.
When a kid comes to you and they share film, and as we talked about earlier, oftentimes kids have an unrealistic expectation of where they can play or how recruitable they are. So when you get a kid's film in and you're taking a look at it, and then you sit down and you have a conversation with them, and maybe you have an idea going into it, kind of what the kid thinks before you watch the film based on the conversation. But when you have to have a difficult conversation with the kid who maybe thinks they're a Division I player, but you watch the film and you're like, look, you can be a college basketball player, but you're probably not going to be a Division I player. How do you approach a conversation like that can be uncomfortable in terms of sharing something that's the truth, but something that the player and their family may not be all that excited to hear?
Oh, yeah. And so, part of that is, my 8 years experience as a Division II coach, as far as recruiting really helps me out here, just because, we would try and recruit kids that were kind of on that D2 Division I border that wanted to go Division I and would hold out to the last minute for Division I. And so, but it's that same recruiting conversation with them as far as, and at the end of the day, a spoonful of sugar kind of helps the medicine go down a little better when it comes to conversations like that. But, it's like we talked about earlier, it's finding the right fit school for you. All right. Now, are you looking to play? Are you looking to compete for conference or potential, national championships? What schools are showing attention to you? And so, but it's also about laying out a lot of options for student athletes. All right. Now, hey, if you want to go Division I, Mike, you can go Division I, but your options are probably going to have to be walk-on. All right. And here's how we do that. And so, but if you want to go and potentially earn a scholarship, Mike, I think your best options to earn a scholarship are probably at the Division II or NAI level. All right. And then, same thing with Division III, as far as, I know you want to earn a scholarship. I know you do. But, hey, Division III offers phenomenal academic scholarships and need-based aid. And so, these schools right here, Otterbein, Ohio Wesleyan, Worcester, these schools are showing you a lot of love and a lot of attention. They're really good basketball programs. I think you should really look at them. All right. Now, I know it might not be Division I, but it's an opportunity to play and to earn a great education, and an education that's going to set you up for the next 60 to 70 years of your life. And so those aren't easy conversations, Mike, and it's very similar to recruiting, but it's about laying options out as far as, once again, if you want to go Division I, if you're dead set on Division II, there's walk-on opportunities, there's JV opportunities. And so, there's ways that we can make that happen, but what's going to make you most happy? Are you going to be happy sitting on the end of the bench not playing? For the most part, most kids will say, no, I want to play, coach. And so, that's kind of a good, determination is, okay, if you want to play, I think these are the right fit schools for you from a playing perspective.
How do you, as a college coach, a former college coach, and then in your current position, how do you weigh AAU basketball and a kid's performance during the AAU season with a kid's performance on their high school team when it comes to them being recruited? How important is one versus the other? Just give us your thoughts from a college coach's perspective. Because we've talked to different coaches, and obviously most of them say that there's, they weigh them similarly. They look for different things depending upon the type of situation that the kid's in. But just from your perspective, if you're talking to a player, how do you get them to think about their AAU experience and their high school experience and how that relates to how they're going to be recruited?
To me, they're equally important. And, I know, one can, like a high school team or an AAU experience better. Everyone has their personal preferences. To me, it's about 50-50 just because it's all about circumstances. A lot of times when we go recruit kids during AAU, you're seeing them play against college level competition. As far as, once again, you're playing against and you're on the floor with 9 other guys that are looking to play college basketball, as opposed to, and how do you fit in? How do you stand out? How do you compete when you're out there amongst 9 other guys that are looking to play in college basketball versus high school, which, once again, there's big time high school, there's different levels of high school, but for the most part, that kid is going to be the best player on his team. And so, it's not exactly heliocentric James Harden where it's all going to roll through him, but for the most part, he's going to be able to show you some things and have more freedom and do more things on his high school team sometimes because he's not around as many good players. And at the same token, that can go the other way. All right. Sometimes the high school team is extremely basic and conservative from a scheme perspective because the coach kind of has to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator versus the AAU program where, hey, maybe he's allowed to get out and transition more. He's allowed to do more things from a ball handling, from a shooting perspective. And so it really is 50-50 because there's so many different circumstances. And so, I always tell kids, coach, should I play AAU? Should I not play AAU? Play AAU. I mean, it's, now once again, you want to make sure you get on a team where you can play. The worst thing is to get seduced by like a Nike or Adidas or a Reebok AAU. I don't know if Reebok still has Under Armour, sponsored AAU team and get some sweet shoes, some nice jerseys, but you sit the bench.
Right.
That's the worst. I mean, I've offered kids scholarships, or something. I mean, my bosses have offered kids scholarships that have played on the most local podunk AAU teams, but we see them out there playing. And it's like that's, you want to show coaches your repertoire. You want to show coaches what you can do. And so AAU in high school, it's about 50-50 just because every situation is going to be different, and typically high school and AAU, they're completely different as far as the schemes, the how the game's played. Typically high school is a much more slower, conservative brand of basketball, at least in Ohio, and versus AAU, which is much more up and down, and you're playing with a lot more talent during the AAU season.
If I'm a player and I want to get on a college coach's radar, let's say I have a program or two, I'm thinking and I'm understanding the level that I want to play at, and I want to start to target a particular school or two, what's the best way for an athlete to reach out to a member of that coaching staff? Is it via email? Is it making a phone call? Is it sending a highlight tape? Is it sending a full game tape? In your experience, what's the best way for a player and their family to make that first contact with a staff at a school that they might be interested in attending?
Yeah, and so it's two things. It's emails and social media. And specifically when I say social media, I mean Twitter, just because college coaches are on Twitter 24/7. And so kind of that first contact, you want to send an email that just kind of gives a quick, maybe intro paragraph to who you are. And then you want to list your highlights, your stats, and your GPA. Those are the main things college coaches want to see kind of from that intro, that first contact you're talking about. College coaches don't want to read long 10-paragraph life stories in that, how much, I love Michael Jordan as a kid and, all these things,
right.
In that first email. You want to keep it short, sweet, and to the point, and you might get zero response from that first contact. But it's just about getting your name in that college coach's head, and then you want to be repetitive with that, as far as continuing to send emails and direct messages on Twitter. But then it's about, okay, if if these schools are in your region or you have access to them, going, like you talked about earlier, Mike, going to those games and getting an up close and personal feel, and then trying to get to those colleges' elite camps. Almost every college has some sort of college prospect camp nowadays. And so if you can get to a college prospect camp, which once again, these are not invite-only camps, they're pretty much open. And so if you can, register for those college prospect camps, you want to do that to get on that college campus, because during those camps you work with those college coaches. And so that's an opportunity to get up close and personal. And then you want to have your high school coach reach out too, just because you want to get, attack these college coaches from as many different angles as possible.
Talk a little bit about the importance of academics, because let's face it, as parents, and I think that I can speak for myself, that if it wasn't for my wife keeping on top of my kids' academics, I'd have a lot more work to do. Mm-hmm. And I tend to focus on the athletic side of my kids' experiences in school, but we all know that academics are critically important. So just talk a little bit about, you mentioned how that's one of the things that you want to make sure that you put in your initial contact with the coach. So just talk a little bit about how important that is and why players, again, starting from 9th grade, where those grades become real and they stay with you, why academics is such a critical part of giving you more options and where you can be recruited.
Academics, your GPA are supremely important. And I'm telling you, the first thing as a college coach that I'm looking at is your highlights. The very next thing is I'm looking at your GPA. And, that is, I don't want to speak for every college coach, but I'm just going to talk about kind of small college basketball, Division II, Division III, NAI. That's pretty much universal. They're looking at your GPA as the very next thing. All right. And a lot of that is, it shows you how important it is in scholarships. All right. And so Division I, the way they do their scholarships, Mike, this is, it's just a full scholarship. There's no academic money. It's just, you get a basketball scholarship. Now, at the Division II, Division in NAI level, those scholarships are stacked and packaged. As far as, Mike, you might have a 3.5 GPA. And so maybe you get like a half scholarship for the school academically. So then as a basketball coach now, you're more of an intriguing prospect to me, because now I only have to offer you a half scholarship to get you to a full, as opposed to someone who's got a 2.2 GPA and they don't get any academic money from my school. So now I have to offer them a full scholarship of athletic money. And so, those kids who have higher academics become more appealing prospects to small college coaches, specifically Division II, NAI, and then Division III offers only academic scholarships. So the higher academics, your GPA, your ACT, your SAT, the more academic money you're going to get from those schools, which at the end of the day, when looking at colleges, you want to play at the highest level possible for the cheapest amount of money. All right. And so, academics, not only play a huge role in just your future as far as, your education and all that stuff, but it plays a huge financial role in your future college.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think sometimes it's something that when we think about the emphasis that we all put as parents, and all you got to do is sit in the stands at an AAU tournament or sit in the stands at a high school game and realize and understand how much importance we as parents place on our children's athletic performance. And yet so often, and I'm sure Jason can attest to this and I can attest to it as a teacher as well, that we don't often see the same level of involvement and concern, unfortunately, on the academic side. And yet, as you said, it's critically important, first of all, just for your future and obviously academics and where you're going to go outside of basketball. But then if you factor it into the basketball piece of it, man, just how many more opportunities you have if you're a good student. And if you put the time in the classroom, it just widens the net that you can cast when you're trying to look for and find a school. And I think people severely underestimate how critical that is.
Oh, absolutely. And so, academics, Basketball, once again, you want to use it as a tool, as a way to, get somewhere in life, but academics are the same way. I mean, if you, really put time in for your grades, standardized testing, I know is something that, might be here, might not be here over the next couple of years, but still putting in the time and effort in those things is not only just going to make you a better person going forward, but then I can't overemphasize enough how important and how valuable it is to college basketball coaches, Division II, Division III, and NAIA. You are a much more appealing prospect the better your grades are. Now, at the end of the day, those coaches, are still trying to win games. They're still going to win, or they're still going to recruit the best possible players they can. But if it's a tie, if Mike, if you and I are the same level player, but I have a 2.0 and you have a 3.5, that college coach is probably going to recruit you because it's going to cost him less to recruit you from scholarship money than it is to recruit and offer me if we're the same level basketball player.
Absolutely. That makes complete sense. When you think about being able to build relationships with college coaches there at NCSA, and obviously you have a background in coaching, and I'm sure that many of the people that work with you have those similar backgrounds, but just as you're trying to build your network of college coaches and making connections, what does that look like from your end of it? How much contact are you making with coaches outside of, you're not necessarily sending them, hey, I got a specific player that I'm trying to send to you, or hey, take a look at this kid, but you're just building that kind of personal relationship so that when you do eventually have a player that you feel like would be a good fit for a coach's program, you've put that relationship in place. So what does that piece of it look like for you?
Yeah, and that, that goes to, if you want to say networking, relationships, you don't just want to get in touch with people when you need something. And that's a good, mantra for life in general. And so you want to continue to nurture, to harvest relationships just because, that's just the right thing to do. And honestly, it's fun for me. We're talking we're able to talk basketball, how's the season going, what's recruiting look like for next year, just what's the state of college basketball like. And so, it's great to check in with college coaches and just kind of get a rundown, whether it's, what they're looking for in a recruiting class this year, how the league's shaping up. And so, for someone like me who's been in college coaching, it's just great to continue to have those conversations and just continue to make more, friends, for lack of a better term. Just because, that's one thing I've learned is, over the years, sometimes I could be, in my younger years, maybe a little quiet and just kind of focus, tunnel vision, as far as I just want to get better. I just want to win games. I just want to recruit, and I don't want to worry about, talking to that guy over there at a recruiting event, but it's like, the older I get, it's more like, no, I want to talk to as many people as possible. And so, that's something that, I think is just a good habit for people to get into in general.
That's great advice. And it's something that I think oftentimes we don't realize that until we get older. I think when you're in your early 20s, you kind of are just focused on yourself and what you need to do, what you can achieve. And the people sort of around you in your sphere, you're not necessarily looking at them and trying to build those relationships in the same way that you do when you get older and you start to realize, the value of those relationships, but just having that personal connection with people. I don't think at least I know for me, when I was younger, I didn't value that. And if I look back on being a very young coach, there are a lot of things that if I had it to do over again, I would do differently. And certainly reaching out to people and building a network sooner, I think would have been something that would have helped me tremendously just as a person. Forget about as a coach, forget about in my career. I think it just would have helped me tremendously as a person to be able to grow and have people that I could learn from. And as you know, as your network grows, and especially as you get older, the people that are part of your network get into places and positions where they are then able to help you and you're able to help them as you grow and move and advance in your career. And I think that's one of the things that, again, I don't think you realize that when you're young.
Oh no, yeah. It's just just from my experience in coaching and just using this metaphor, it's just or this example is hey, with young coaches, when you're at AAU events or you're at anything, don't just sit there in the chair by yourself staring at the games. All right, we're all watching the games. All right, and you're not figuring out some prospect that no one else sees. Talk, like that's just what I would do. I would just sit there and just focus in, like I'm going to rediscover the wheel here, and but no, talk to the guys next to you, talk to the coaches next to you, and and once again, it's not like you have to go out of your way to I'm going to talk to every single coach and shake every hand, and you don't have to be over the top like that, but just talk to people, like you said, in your bubble, in your sphere, and like you said, it's just having those relationships because they're your peers. And they're going to go on and do things, and you just want to create those relationships. And it's like I scroll back through my phone now, and it's just like, how many coaching friends do I have? It's unbelievable how many people I still stay in touch with, I still talk to on a daily basis, and I'm so thankful for those relationships. As I look back on it,
that's been one of the things that's been, I think, the most satisfying for Jason and I as doing the podcast. And it's not something that I ever would have thought before we started it was going to be a part of the podcast experience. And that's just developing relationships with some of the people that we've been fortunate enough to have on the show. And it obviously doesn't happen with every single guest, but we've had a number of guests that we now consider to be friends. And you never would have guessed that, hey, you're show up for a podcast for an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, and then you develop this relationship. And through that, I've gone and been able to work at Jay Billis's camp, and Jason and I have been able to go and work at Snow Valley camp out in Iowa with Coach Showalter. And it's like those people knew us from talking for an hour and a half on this silly podcast, and it built these relationships that have given us great experiences and great friendships. And it's really that ultimately, again, it's the people, right? It's the people. That's what it's all about. Like in your position as a college coach, you're trying to help the kids that you're coaching. You're trying to build relationships with other coaches. Ultimately, you're using the game of basketball to try to improve people's lives. Now, you're trying to win some games along the way and make better basketball players too, but ultimately, you're trying to impact people and impact their lives. And then you think about what you're doing now. I mean, what could be more impactful than helping a kid make the right decision about where they're going to go to school? Look, I got a senior right now. My daughter, she's not a basketball player. She's not an athlete right now, but she's a very good student, and trying to figure out and help her to navigate the process of where's she going to go to school at this point in her life, and for the impact that it's going to have over the course of her life. There's really not many more important decisions I can help her with. And you just think about that process of what you're being able to do now and have that impact. It's got to be something that every day you got to feel like, man, I'm really making a difference for the kids and families that I get to serve.
Oh, no doubt. It's extremely, fulfilling. And, that's why, I told my wife I want to find something that is, in basketball and it's fulfilling. And this is fulfilling because it dives into, like I talk about mentorship, what you talk about, Mike, as far as, helping kids, because recruiting is tough. And luckily, I've been behind the curtain specifically with basketball. And so I'm able to use my experience as a player and a coach to help these kids and parents through the recruiting process, from everything from ACT, SAT, eligibility center, to, okay, well, what AAU team should I play for? Do I go to elite camps? How do I get in touch with college coaches? What level? I mean, and so it's not just basketball, it's helping them through this entire college recruiting process, which is extremely difficult. I look back on it and, I'm the oldest of 3 kids. And so it's like, my recruiting process, when I love my parents and they're my heroes, but they were clueless on it. It's like,
yeah, I know exactly.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know exactly. I was the same way. Had no idea. No idea.
And so I do find a lot of joy and fulfillment in helping these families out find the right fit, or at least help them, guide them in the right direction. And so, that's just something. And going back to what we said, as far as the biggest decision, and, I'm going to steal something from my old boss at Ashland Ellenwood. He said, choosing your college is your first big decision in your life. There's going to be bigger decisions, as far as, choosing who you decide to marry. That's the biggest decision probably of your life. But your first big decision of your life is where you go into college. And, I take extreme pride and joy in helping kids and families find that right fit school for them.
How long is the typical relationship that you have as you're helping an athlete and their family? Do you start the process with them? And I know it probably varies. You have people that jump in for short pieces of advice, and then you have people who have the longer term. But just a typical relationship that you would have where a family comes to you and says, hey, we need help. How long does that relationship typically take? What's the time frame?
Yeah, and so, the longest relationship for me right now is about 8 months, just because that's as long as I've been in the position. And so, that's as long as I go, at least with NCSA right now. But I'd say generally, you want to start, your recruitment process around your, mid to late sophomore year, and so college coaches, Division I and Division II, aren't able to really talk to kids until June 15th after their sophomore year. And so that kind of line of demarcation is kind of a good, okay, this is when recruiting can start to pick up. And so, a lot of kids will join NCSA as freshmen or sophomores, and some juniors and even seniors. All right, but I'd say, on average, it's around, late sophomore, so starting your junior year. So, about 2 to 2.5 years.
Gotcha. And as you walk through and you take them through that process, what do you think is the area that people are the least educated about when it comes to recruiting? Where do you see the biggest knowledge gap when you talk to athletes and their families when it comes to understanding the process of what it takes to be recruited?
Oh, it's tough to pin down just one thing there, Mike.
All right, give me your top three.
Yeah.
How about that?
And once again, hey, I was guilty of this as a high schooler, self-awareness to what level you are,
Yep.
Which, once again, that's not easy, just because you don't see Division III games on TV. You don't see Division II games on TV. And so your exposure to what's possible or what's available to me is tough. And so, I'd say, awareness as far as level, but then even as far as, how do I, like you said, how do you get in touch with college coaches? That's something that is, very foreign, just because, it's like, well, do I just email them off their, or do I just cold call their office, or, how do I get in touch with them? How do I make sure that they know how good I am? And so it's self-awareness as far as what level you are. How do you get in touch and communicate with college coaches? And then the third part would probably be the academic/application process. As far as, we talk about how academics sometimes, at least in the basketball recruiting process, get underappreciated, undervalued. When and how do you take the ACT, SAT? And then is that even going to be valued over the next couple of years? How do you register with the eligibility center? And just what all goes into that process. And then the admissions process, as far as, just going through that complicated process. And so you're really helping kids and families figure out that academic piece and just how important that is, like we were just talking about. So I'd say those three main things.
Yeah, good luck filling out the FAFSA, by the way.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Oh, my gosh. That thing is it's like a disaster. I'm like, why do you need all this stuff? You already got my tax return. It has every one of these pieces of information that you're asking me to go in and find and sort through the whole document. And that was, for any parent out there, whether your kid is an athlete or not, to go through that process, it takes a long time, and you better be well versed in your tax situation.
Oh my gosh,
to be able to do it. It's crazy, honestly. Like I knew it was involved from talking to other people, but having sat down and done it myself this year for the first time, I had no idea how involved it was. My daughter just got an email tonight that said it was a form from, I think it was from Lehigh, and the form said something to the effect of, your information that you put on your CCS profile did not match the information that you put on your FAFSA. And then it had like 15 different categories that were all blank. Like they had nothing. There was no, like they didn't give you the figures that weren't accurate. And so they gave you two different boxes you could check. One was, I made an error and here's the correct figures. And the other one said, it was accurate at the time that I submitted it. And we started to look and see, well, maybe we can go back and check. And then we just said, no, it was accurate when we submitted it. We just checked that box. We're like, we're moving on from this.
Yeah, I tell you what, the amount of conversations I've had over the years, not just with NCSA, but over the years as a college coach, of walking people through the steps of the FAFSA, yes, it is an absolute maze.
Yeah, you better definitely parents out there, set aside some time for that without question.
Yes.
All right, Rob, we are heading towards an hour and a half, so I want to wrap it up with one final two-part question. So number one, when you look ahead and you think about what you're doing now and why you went to NCSA and what you hope to accomplish there, what's your biggest challenge moving forward? And then number two, when you get out of bed every day, what brings you the most joy about your job?
All right, so the first part was biggest challenge.
Correct.
And so, I mean, biggest challenge is just continuing to find challenges, I guess. As far as, when you're going through coaching, there's always a next opponent. There's always a next recruit. There's always, the next season. There's always that. And now that I don't want to say I'm in the business world, but I'm not in the coaching world anymore. And so you don't have, that next opponent. You don't have that next, true game and competition. And so, finding challenges every day is something that, I've enjoyed so far. But then looking forward, I look forward to finding more challenges. And just talking with my manager and my bosses here at NCSA, they've got a lot of things planned for me here. And so, it's finding that challenge, and that just, I'm a very competitive person. And so, finding those kind of things that are going to, continue to push me. And so, I want to say my biggest challenge is finding challenges, just because, if I don't have a challenge or an opponent or, a motive or something like that, I'm a very competitive person. And so, that's something that I look forward to is the right way to, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but I look forward to finding new challenges.
That takes us right back to the top of the conversation of Michael Jordan, right?
Yes, exactly.
Always looking for challenges, looking for slights, looking for something to motivate him. I completely understand. All right.
Exactly.
That answer makes complete sense. All right. Your biggest joy.
Biggest joy is by far just being on the phone with families and or on the phone or seeing an email. It's just, Coach, thanks for making a difference. And you get that in coaching all the time to where, am I really making a difference in these kids' lives? Am I really, doing, and then, hey, maybe you get a text from a kid who, you coached 3 years ago, and it's just, hey, thanks, Coach, really, or you get an email or a handwritten letter from a kid, and those things just melt your heart. And, those things really can propel you. And so that's something that I've really enjoyed is, a couple of just great families that I've worked with that, really helping them. And so really seeing them find the right fit school and right fit college has just been, super fulfilling. And so that's something that just, having that positive impact on a young man's life and family, is something that really keeps me going.
That's good stuff. And I'm sure as you remain longer in that position, you help more kids to find that right fit. You're going to get more of those emails, more of those texts from kids who have found the right place. Exactly. That they're going to reach back out to you and say, hey, thanks. You helped me to make that first big decision of my life. You helped to make it a good one. So again, Rob, we cannot thank you enough for being a part of the Hoopheads podcast. Before we get out, I want to give you a chance to share how people can get in touch with you, how they can find more out about NCSA, and just whether it's social media, website, email, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. And then after you do that, I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Yeah. Hey, anyone, tweet at me at Coach Rob _G. So I'm very active on Twitter. I'm working with actually Slapping Glass right now a little bit. I don't know if anyone listens to that podcast as well.
Great guys.
Working with
Dan
them
and
a
Patrick
little bit.
Are awesome.
Yeah, doing some videos with them. And so, just love talking hoops, love breaking down film. And so, but yeah, hit me up on Twitter at Coach Rob _G. And so, yeah, would love to talk to anyone about whether it's NCSA, finding that next right fit college. Anyone just wants to talk college basketball. Anyone just wants to talk NBA. I'm down for that too. All right. But yeah, NCSA, we're at ncsasports.org. Once again, ncsasports.org. All right, as a way to get there. And once again, if you're interested in NCSA, please hit me up on Twitter. All right. Or, hey, here's my cell phone number, 614-370-1811. Hit me up anytime about anything.
Great stuff tonight, Rob. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that people out there in our audience have learned a lot. The impact, like we said, that you've been able to have in your career as a coach, and now transferring that impact and doing it in a different way and still helping people to make good decisions to help them to further their college basketball aspirations, hopes, and dreams. So thank you for that, Rob. We appreciate your time. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.